Hello and welcome to this first video on program enrolment. Here we're going to provide an overview of what program enrolment is, the tasks you carry out in it, and just the general overview. Okay, so program enrolment, this is the PE part of PEAM, the other part being activity management, which is covered in other videos. Okay, so as an introduction, what are the key things that program enrolment does? First of all, it facilitates online course enrolment. So this is the part of the system that enables students in self-service to go in and make their module course choices at different parts of the year, so they can get enrolled on all the courses they need to complete their study. It's also used to record student performance, so it enables us to record whether a student has passed a stage, whether they've completed their degree, and it records the outcomes of all the courses they take as well. And it also supports the calculation of student progression and degree award. Essentially, it acts as a repository, A, for information that's used in the progression calculation, and then B, the outcome of that calculation. Okay, so it records both parts. Okay, so this is kind of an overview structure of the different records within program enrolment that we use. So over here, we've got, this is the kind of the curriculum part of it. We've got the program of study. So the program of study, this is the structure which determines what courses a student takes when, the different stages, etc., the structure of their study. The program form, and this is the program of study is something that administrators will create and maintain. Okay. Then we've got program format and we've got enrolment cohort down here. So these, I've called them system records. They're both curriculum records, but they are created and managed by IS. These are not records that are going to be created or managed by administrators. So that's why I call them system records. So the program format, this is like a template that we use to create a program of study. So we may have, say, a program of study which has 3 stages and 3 semesters for each stage. So we'll have a program format set up like that, and it will just do the initial build and make creating that program of study a lot easier. And then the enrolment cohort, essentially this takes a program of study and attaches it to a particular timeline. So if a student's starting in 2016 and they've got 3 years study, then it will say, right, stage 1, 2016, stage 2, 2017, stage 3, 2018. So these 3 records are used to create what we call the academic progress tracker. So this is a student record. There's one of these for each student who are doing a structured program of study. And essentially it's a student version of the program of study, which drives online enrolment, but also enables us to record the marks they've got for courses and then the outcome for each stage of their study. So in creating the APT, Academic Progress Tracker, the program of study provides the structure, what courses they'll be doing, what are compulsory, restricted, etc. The program format provides the planning node. So the planning node is basically the level in their program of study at which they plan their choices. And this is normally the stage. So we'll say, right, you're going to make your choices for a particular stage. It could be qualifying year, and they're going to go in and say, so you need to make your choices, your restricted and your alternative optional choices for your qualifying year, as opposed to, say, making choices for the whole program of study or just for one semester. So the program of format determines that, and then, as I said, the enrolment cohort determines the timeline that's attached to the APT. Okay, so this is the curriculum system side, which all come together to create the APT, Academic Progress Tracker, which is the student side. Then we've got here a number of system processes that we use to create and manage the APT. The first one is APT requests. That's used to create the APTs. APT enrolment creates the compulsory enrolment, so it takes the courses that are identified as compulsory in the APT and enrolls students on the relevant classes in the right year. APT sync, this basically takes course enrolments in student records and brings them back in that information back into the APT to identify where a student's enrolled on a course and where they've dropped a course. And then the APT administrative roster, this is used to make adjustments to the APT structure. So let's say we've had a change in the program of study at a late stage. Maybe one of the compulsory courses has been it needs to be replaced because the teaching staff can no longer run it. That's the sort of task we use the APT admin roster for. Okay, so that gives you the kind of overall the main records that we're using in PE. Okay, program of study. So let's look at this first. So this is where it's a curriculum-based record. It's where we use to define the academic content for a specific academic plan. So number of stages, compulsory courses in each stage, semesters, and then the things like the restricted and alternative lists that students can choose from and whether they've got any free choice that they can use. We also set parameters. So this is where, and examples of parameters are min-max values and enrolment categories. So min-max values will typically be number of credits. So we need to set in the program of study the number of credits they have to take to complete a stage, number of credits they can choose in a semester, which might be 50 to 70 credits for an undergraduate. It could be number of credits the student needs to take from a course list. So it may say you need to take 10 to 30 credits from this course list. All those values need to be entered into the program of study because they're going to be used by rules to check, to validate students' choices when they make them in self-service. Enrolment categories, so these are compulsory, restricted, alternative, etc. So they're used, we attach those to records in the program of study because it determines what the students can do with those records when they're making their choices. So say for compulsory courses, that they will have an enrolment category of compulsory, and this will say students aren't allowed to add to or remove these from their in self-service. Whereas for restricted, the enrolment category will have a restricted value, and it will say, you know, they are allowed to add courses, choose courses, and they're allowed to drop them. Okay, so we create the structure, we set the parameters, and we attach rules. So there'll be a whole range of rules that are being created that are used, A, to check self-service choices, and B, to calculate progression and degree award. So these rules need to be attached at the suitable level within a program of study, and that's what they're there for. And we also have result types in a program of study. So these are results that are essentially used in progression and degree award calculation. So it could be number of failed credits for a stage, number of passed credits for a stage, average mark for a stage, or average mark for the program of study. These all need to be added to the relevant records in a program of study, and they will then be populated by rules as the student progresses to provide information that we need for progression and degree award. Okay, so that's the program of study. Is that right? Yeah. And then we've got system records. So these are the ones I've mentioned above. We've got a program format. So this, as I said, this is the template that we use to build a program of study, and it also determines at what level in that program of study students can plan their choices, which I said is normally by stage. So a student will make their choices for the qualifying year, and then the following year they make their choices for part 1 and then part 2, etc. And again, the enrolment category, which I've already mentioned, so this determines student options in planning and adding and dropping enrolments in self-service. So compulsory, they can't add or drop, but restricted and alternative, they will be able to. And then finally, the enrolment cohort. So this provides a timeline for the students' program of study. So when they start, it will say, it'll pick up, right, they're doing this free stage, free session program of study. So they're starting in 2016. We're going to assign them, attach stage 1 to 2016, stage 2 to 2017, etc. And that's what that does. Okay, so those are the 3 other main sort of records on the system curriculum side. And then we come to the academic progress tracker. So in the academic progress tracker, this is used to determine what stage a student can plan for in self-service and when. So it's got its timeline added, and it will say, right, well, you can plan for this stage and you'll be doing that in 2016. It records student choices. So when students they plan their choices in self-service, or they enroll on courses, or they drop courses, and when they complete a course, all that information will be held in the academic progress tracker. Okay, and then recording course marks. So if you've already looked at activity management, you'll know that we store their assessment and their overall course marks are calculated in activity management. Those marks are transferred when they're completed into the academic progress tracker for the relevant student, and then it's in the academics progress tracker that the progression rule will run and check that have students passed all their courses and what are the marks, so we can calculate the overall average mark, etc. So those marks and information go into the APT as well. And then finally, it acts as a repository for progression outcomes. So this is where we store whether a student has satisfied requirements for a stage, and or for the program of study as a whole. So it kind of acts as a repository for their progression, which is kind of implicit in the title. Okay, so then finally, these are system processes that are used to create and manage the APT. So the APT request, this is this process that will be used to create student APTs and activates planning nodes. So let's say we've got a student who's in year 1, they've got an APT that was created by APT request when they started. We've got through to May of the following year. Now they need to start planning their choices for part 1. And to do that, we have to activate the planning node for part 1, and that will be done sort of April, May, so students can make their choices for the following year, if that makes sense. APT enrolment, so where we've got, this creates class enrolments for compulsory courses. So the students got 3 compulsory courses. They can't enroll on those through self-service. We need another process to get them enrolled on that, and the process is APT enrolment, and it will basically automatically create class enrolments for those compulsory students for this compulsory courses for the students on that particular academic plan. And then finally, we have APT sync. So this updates the APT with student records course enrollment. So the students enrolled on a course, it will take that enrollment, the APT sync process, and then update the student's APT to say yes, they're enrolled on it, or they may have dropped it. So it will say they've now dropped this course. And it will also be used to say if students chosen a course in the planner in self-service, it will show that they've planned that course. They're not enrolled on it yet, but they've planned it in self-service. And then finally, the APT administrative roster. So this supports updates to the APT structure and records. So if I need to substitute course B with course A, because we're making a late change to the program of study after the APTs have been created, then that is the tool that we will use. Now, almost all of these, apart from possibly the APT admin roster, are not going to be run by administrative staff. These 3 certainly won't be. Generally they're going to be overnight processes that will run to keep the students' APT up to date. Okay. APT enrolment will probably be more of a one-off in the year, but regardless, they're all going to be run by IS. They're not going to be run by administrative staff, and it's probably just the APT administrative roster where we need to make late changes to a program of study and have those changes reflected in students' APTs that we will use, the administrative staff will use that process. Okay, so that gives you an overview, an introduction to program enrolment, the different records and how it works, and then further videos will be used to go into more detail for each part of that.